So, hi, everybody here and everybody who may or may not be watching yet. I'm Clifton with SQOLOGY, and we're doing a first here that we don't know what we're doing, as you can tell. So we're giving it a shot, but basically we're going to try to get a conversation between you guys and some major competitors that are in the U.S. From Illinois, we have Ben Zimmerman. From Texas, Nick Wingate. From Missouri, Randy Coonan in the top right. Mark Eldridge in the bottom right. Oklahoma. And we have Jeff Smith in the middle bottom, who is everywhere. He was just here, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I was just there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So thanks for the timing. Anyway, so Mark has about a half hour with us, so we're going to hit him first. So Mark, if you could give us just a little bit of the background bio of your history and competition and where you are now, and we can go from there.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Man, been doing car audio since 1978. With my first vehicle in competition, started building a competition vehicle in about 91, 92, and first actual competition was in 93. Competed amateur 251 to 500 for a year, pro 251 to 500 for a year, and then moved to expert in 95. And that's when everything kind of snowballed for me and really took off. Won finals that year, competed in Iasca, USAC, Mecca, DB Drag, actually once. That was funny. And CMAA, TOW, SLAP. I mean, every organization I could find that had sound quality competition in it, I did it. And always in the expert class or the upper class, whatever they had at the time. Competed every year until 2016, and have, I won't say officially retired, but have not been competing since then. Had a lot of other family stuff going on and everything else, but still involved doing the training, advanced sound quality seminars, and shows and things of that nature. So yeah, that's my background.
So first of all, since you guys know him to a certain degree, does anybody on the panel have any questions for Mark first?
Don't be shy.
What's been your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge competition-wise?
Competition-wise,
He had to put up with Doug Winker.
Obstacles in getting
Doug Winker's a challenge, yeah.
Obstacles in the competition scene, but also obstacles in achieving the sound that you want in a vehicle. What's always your biggest hurdle?
Okay, well, the sound in the vehicle is always the biggest hurdle. That will always be the biggest hurdle, because we are not in an ideal environment. You're never optimally placed. And when I started, everything was judged for both front seats, 2-seat competition. And to try and equalize both seats to make them both sound good was a monumental task. We only had analog signal processing. And learning how to deal with the laws of physics and human physiology and how we hear and interpret sounds, and put all that together and make it sound really good for both front seats was definitely the biggest challenge we ever had. The challenge today is much simplified compared to what we had in the 90s. I don't want to say old school is better or anything. It just is what it is. But with all the signal processing we have now and everything else, it's quite a bit easier to make a single seat sound amazingly good. And the 2-seat was by far the biggest challenge. And just learning how we as humans interpret sounds versus what you may look at something and go, okay, I think that's how it's going to work. But human physiology doesn't always work the way you look at it and think, oh, that's the way it's going to be. The way we interpret sounds can be very different depending on frequency range and other factors. So by far, making a car sound good for both front seats is the biggest challenge that we will probably ever have.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions? It could be anything. All right. Say your name.
Hi, Mark. It's Carl here.
Hey, Carl.
So you say you run sound quality seminars. What does that look like? I'd be interested, what kind did you teach on there? What do people learn from that?
Yeah, what it is, it's a 2-day class I put together. Started modeling that from what Richard Clark and Dave Navoni were doing with the AutoSound 2000 seminars, and I helped with them for a number of years. And about 95, there were a lot of people wanting to learn more about sound and didn't have a good handle on how to approach it. And I started putting together the way I did things and collecting information from other people, Doug and Nick and everybody else around the country that was doing sound quality. And I put together a 2-day class. It used to be 5 days, but nobody can come to a class for 5 days anymore. So, but it's 2 full days talking about sound, and we start talking about the music for about half the day. We talk about the recordings and how they're done in the recording studios, how they're physically put on tape or whatever format you have. We talk about listening to the music. I've got 3 different reference systems that you can switch instantaneously between all 3 and compare the presentation of the music on a large far field format, a medium format, and then a near field system like a recording engineer would use. Then we get into how the human hearing system works and why we hear things the way we do, because we analyze sounds very differently at low frequency than high frequency. And if you don't understand that, when you're trying to tune a car, you can get into a deep world of hurt, making changes that are not helping, and you don't understand why. So that's pretty important. We talk about the reflections in the acoustical environment, path lengths, speaker placement, using equalization and actually using signal processors, and how to make the changes that are going to help the sound of the system. And we have usually people bring a couple cars, and we'll practice tuning on cars. We'll set up a simulated car in the class, and it's 2 very full days, and it never stops. And we pretty much go to the end of each day until everybody says, okay, my head's exploding, let's stop for the day. And then we move on. But it's a fun class. I learn something new every time I teach it. And I always tell every class when they show up, I don't know where we're going with this particular class, but we're going to take off on a couple tangents that we've never been to before, because somebody will bring something up and we'll go and we'll talk about it and we'll figure it out. So it's a blast. It's a good time. What's next?
Do you have a follow-up? Okay.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's Brett. Nice to meet you all. I had a question for Mark. I always remember, Mark, reading an article in one of the old magazines about your Forerunner, where you got the waveguides going up the screen. What was your favourite car you built?
My favorite car that I built? It's hard to say, because the Forerunner, I learned probably 75-80% of what I know about sound through working on the Forerunner. And, it started with a simple system, speaker system. Then I went into underdash horns and got very frustrated with that. And then started doing the horns at the top of the dash, and had, I don't even know, 6 different versions of that. The last version of the Forerunner was a pair of Tannoy coincident point source drivers about halfway out to the headlights, because I'd cut the firewall out and built enclosures went way out front, and very tightly controlled. Sold the Forerunner, and I've got my NASCAR Sprint Cup car now that I've been running for a number of years. And I've got to say, I like this car better than any other. The Forerunner was pinpoint precise. The Forerunner put a lot of points on the score sheet, and it was designed for competition. It sounded great. Don't get me wrong, it sounded great, but it wasn't big, and it wasn't enveloping, and it wasn't like you're in a real space. Where the car I've got now, I like listening to it because it's so big. It just sounds like you're in a real space almost. Not that any car ever will really truly do that, but this one's pretty close. And I like what I've got right now. It's and it can be better. It'll never be perfect, but I like what I've got.
Thank you for that. And you touched
You bet.
on Clark and Navone. Did you ever hear his Grand Buick?
Oh yeah, I heard his. That was one of the key turning points for me, was listening to the Grand National. In 1992, I drove from Texas to North Carolina for one of the Autosound 2000 seminars, the first one I ever went to. And they had the Grand National in the parking lot. And Ellen Threet, who is now Ellen Smith, Manville Smith's wife, was helping Richard tune the car. And she was in the vehicle doing demos. And there's a line of, 30, 40 people long. And you could get in the car and she would demo the car for 2 or 3 minutes just so you could get a feel for what it sounds like. And when I got in, I sat down and said, Ellen, I'm really just now getting into the competition scene. And I don't understand staging and imaging and some of these things. And she sat there and put on some different music. And we sat in that car for 20, 30 minutes while all these people are waiting in line outside. And she's sitting there teaching me what to listen for and how to listen. And just blew me away. I mean, that car, the one thing I remember about that car, the imaging was pinpoint precise and the mid bass was unbelievably tight and clean and defined. And I heard it many times since then. And actually, I was the one that tore it apart when we were getting ready to redo it with Pioneer in 98, and that never materialized. But that was a unique car, a very unique car. Did a great job with it to begin with. And then Richard added some more high-tech, amazing things to it, and it was pretty cool. It was a great car.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else in the room have any questions? We got Griggs here now. He showed up, so yay. So now you can just be on the spot and you can ask the questions. Anybody else in the room have any questions, or anybody on the panel have any other questions for Mark or comments or anything else? Why is everybody so quiet?
Maybe throw a plug out for the people watching. You do have the ability to post comments, and if you want to post some questions there, we'll definitely take them.
Mark, do you have anything else you have on your mind that you would like to add? I know there was stuff on the podcast that you didn't get in, so if there's anything that you wanted to get in now, we can do that.
No, I'm just looking at a group of people that are really interested in sound quality, and that's, for me, that's the best part. And I've not been to Europe to work in that arena. I've been all over the rest of the world, quite literally. But it's nice to see a group of people that are dedicated to making cars sound better. So, hey, how you doing? How many people are over there this weekend?
I think we got about 70 altogether.
Oh, wow.
71,
That's
because
great.
Griggs is here now. So he made a late announcement. All right. I guess let's go to Ben. Mark, you can hang out, take off whenever you have need to. And if you have any questions in this meantime, go ahead and pop in.
All right.
So, Ben, since you were worried about your battery, we'll go to you next.
I'm down to like 75% already. Well, hi. What you got?
I don't
I'm
know
sitting
yet.
here in my car. I figured this was the most appropriate place to broadcast from for a car audio event.
Right. So Ben is co-founder of SQOLOGY, since that's why he has a shirt like mine. And so Ben, why don't you give us some quick background on you and what you're thinking about recently?
Quick background. So mainly just a hobbyist. Musician all my life. Started at age 5 playing the violin, and have played a lot of different instruments throughout school, played in college, and did some music business and studio engineering at Belmont University in Nashville when I was there in the late 90s. So kind of building on that, when I got my first car when I was 16, good sound was important to me because I was a musician. I wanted things to sound real and natural, and so did everything I could without much resource at the time. my resource was going to the local stereo shop and spending a lot of time there talking to the owner, and he put me in his own vehicle, which he demoed for me, and it was set up very, very well. Obviously all analog at the time, but he was able to present an image out on the dash that kind of blew my mind based on what I was hearing in all the cars at the time. It presented a very realistic experience. So I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and just kind of did everything I could to achieve that. Being 16, I didn't have much money, so I didn't have a big budget to do a lot of really cool things. But as I got older and obviously the internet evolved, I ended up on some car audio forums and some very car specific forums. Like I got into BMWs and I was on a BMW forum, which Jeff Smith, who was on our panel today, realized just recently that we used to banter back and forth on Bimmer forums in the car audio section with Tom Myers and Ken Ward, who were also in that particular forum.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so we kind of all chatted back and forth about car audio crap before we even really knew each other, or that we were all kind of on the same path. So that's been interesting to realize. Anyway, around the same time, Scott Buwalda was starting up hybrid audio, and I was building a new system in a new car. And one of the forum members at that BMW group said, "Hey, why don't you check out these new hybrid audio speakers? This guy, Scott Buwalda, is, kind of knows what he's doing and has designed these things to do, what he needs them to do in a car." So got connected with Scott Buwalda, and therefore kind of entered, or at least started following the car audio competition scene. Didn't really get into it so much from a competition level because I really just was doing it for myself. I just wanted to have a great music experience in my car. And then about 5 years or so ago, Tom Myers and Cliff, who's there with y'all, persuaded me to go take an IASCA judging course just to kind of learn exactly what the judges are looking for, and it kind of confirmed a lot of what I was already doing. Hi, Tom. Look at that guy.
How are you this morning, sir?
Anyway, that's that guy's fault that I'm in car audio competition at the moment. But I've kind of evolved in the hobby and just trying to please my own ears, but also now trying to please judges' ears. And a lot of that is trying to figure out, I hate to get into judge preference, but figuring out what judges like what and who I'm tuning for and what they're expecting. And there's a whole side of that goes into competition also. But overall, trying to achieve a reference sound in a vehicle at a competition level now.
All right, I'm going to go on to Nick to go that, and then we'll get back to questions and answers in a bit. So, Nick, I know you're possibly the oldest person on the panel, so
Thanks.
that's cool. So, Nick,
Wow,
how'd you get into competition? Where'd you come from? What are you doing? Where are you going?
No, I'm going to profile him even more because let's just say this right now. Without knowing where Nick lives, and if you guys in the UK know anything about pop culture and kind of demographics here in the United States, I say that man lives in Texas, just by the stuff that's on the wall.
And you would be correct, sir. A little town to the north of Austin called Liberty Hill. It's about 2,000 people. But good morning or afternoon there, and thank you all for having me. I got involved in car audio back in 1977. I am kind of probably the oldest person here. When I was introduced to a vehicle that a gentleman who was a high-end home audio owner of a store in Beaumont, Texas, he built a car with pro audio drivers, pro audio speakers in his car. And I was a customer with the home audio side. And a lot like Ben, I got in the car and listened to the vehicle, and I was just absolutely floored that a vehicle could actually give this kind of soundstage. It imaged well. It had great depth. It was a lot of fun to listen to. And he happened to listen to Pink Floyd at really loud levels, and it was just so much fun to listen to. And that kind of got me started. and started competing because of him. He asked me to basically build a car and compete in Car Audio Nationals, which is something that Alpine has sponsored, and he had become an Alpine dealer. And it just snowballed from there. Went to Car Audio National Finals in Phoenix. Got my You Know What handed to me by man Bill Smith. That was a lot of fun. And it literally went to the point where, like Mark in 94, 95 in Iasca, ended up in the expert class because of the rules. And I had the unfortunate/fortunate time to go up against Mark Eldridge. And we became competitors, great friends, still is. He's one of the closest people I know. It just grew to the point to where, because I had to beat Mark, I had to try to beat Mark, I ended up becoming associated with Focal here in the United States. And over the last 15 to 20 years, I've actually been involved with Orca Design, which is a distributor here in the United States of Focal, in one way or the other. And now I do all the product training and sales training for that company. But still involved in competition. I judge as often as I can. Unfortunately, most of the time I can't because I've got cars in the lane and Clifton won't let me judge. It's an inside joke there.
Details.
And, yeah, details. And still work in tuning cars with the team. We have a Focal competition team. And, it's just it's just been one of those things that when you get involved in this, it's not about the competing, quote unquote. For me, it's about the people and the common interest we all have, which is the music, and how much we all enjoy the music. And for me, that's what it's all about, is being able to enjoy the music in this crazy, stupid environment called a car, which we all know is the worst thing to try and make something sound good. And if we can make it sound a little bit better and be a little more enjoyable, then I'm all about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I am going to stay in Texas, and we'll go to Mr. Chris Pate, Mobile Toys Extraordinaire. He's a noob, so you can tell. He's like the little Nick. So what do you got going on, Chris? Tell us about yourself.
Got into car audio in '95. Like most people, it was a cool job, and I was into sound, and everybody that's younger, it's what you do. You put subs in cars and have a good time, and ended up in College Station, Texas, getting my undergraduate degree at Texas A&M University, and met some people, and got into building more elaborate systems, and ended up meeting up with Wilson Adcock, and who was really the first person that showed me anything really about sound and and competition. And at that point, in 1998, 1999, it's time to build a car, and really kind of grew from there. From meeting Wilson, met up with Mickey Bronis, and that led to meeting Nick, and those are some of my closest friends. And really, truly, there for a number of years, we were in the lower classes, and we built a ton of cars for other guys that were competing in USAC and Iasca, and did really well, won a bunch of championships. But we would always, we'd have our own car in the lane, the Civic, and do pretty well. It was always top 5, always get on the podium, but never was able to really get it over the hill. And moved into the expert class. I don't remember. I think it's 01, maybe 02. I don't even remember anymore. And didn't do too bad. I wasn't, honestly, it went okay. We ended up, I think we placed 4th that year, which to Gary Biggs and Mark and those guys, which is, nothing to scoff at. That's who you're going after. And, and coming up with the group that, that we were with, that was a big deal. So somewhere around that time, I decided that, I really wanted to, hone my skills and become a better installer and a better builder. And I was just about done with college. And so Gary Biggs talked me into moving up to Tulsa, and I went up to Tulsa and, I worked for Rob Rice and kind of worked under Gary and at his shop at night and did some stuff with Mark and, basically soaked up all the knowledge that I could. And somewhere around that time, me and Gary finished the Civic as in a version that you guys kind of recognize when it had no steering system in it. And, we took it to finals, me and Nick, and I don't know, probably wouldn't have had the amps fail, probably would have won that year, but it's the only time that it's in the version it is that it's ever lost. And but we got second that year. And then, it was a few years later, I moved back down to College Station and I changed to find the store that I used to work at, Mobile Toys Inc. And, we moved to down here and decided that we would take the Civic and we would turn into a center drive car. It was one of those things, just like everybody knows, a car's a really hell of an environment to build a great sound stage in. My background's in studio engineering. I played in a touring rock band for 24 years. So a lot of time in the studio, and I got a lot of good reference systems at home. And, so it's one of those things you want to carry that environment into the car. And it's just, the only way to really do it is to build a near field monitor system in a car. And so basically took the Civic, gutted everything out of it and, built a three-way front end from using, obviously Focal products, which I've been associated with, the same with Nick for, probably 20 years as well. And, it was really kind of a joke. It wasn't something we thought we would just do once. And, it caused an uproar and it was a lot of fun doing it. And we ended up at finals that year and at spring break and, running up against Gary and it was a cool thing. It was kind of a come full circle. We were able to win and Gary's one of my closest friends. I'd honestly say I'm not where I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for Gary. And, me and Nick, I've done a ton of cars together. I think it's 44, 46 championships that we've won. And, it's been a heck of a ride. We also did the 2-seat Suburban there for a couple of years as well. But at the end of the day, I'm a builder and, we build a ton of cars and, I'm not haven't competed in the last 2 or 3 years and I did just sell the Civic. So maybe we'll be back in a couple of years competing, but right now I know we've got 3 big SQ builds we're doing right now at the shop that are no holds barred, over the top, full dash, super crazy builds. And, we do a lot of hot rod interiors. And then of course, I have my manufacturing company building, sub boxes. So, and that's me in a nutshell, man.
Big nutshell.
It's a little nutshell.
So Chris has to leave fairly soon as well. So does anybody in here have any questions for Chris while you got him? He also happens to have one of the biggest shows in the world. So, details, but
we do. I do. We do have one of the biggest shows.
I think I heard a couple people last night talking about coming out from there next year. So that'll be fun. Anybody? Come on. You guys are all talking, and now you got your stage. And why'd you sell the Civic? I got a question here.
Why did I sell the Civic? So I'm big into hot rods these days, as if anybody that knows me knows that. And I kind of have this thing to where I refuse to build another car that's not going to be worth money at the end of it. The Civic has had its run, and it's great, but at the end of the day, if I change it up on the inside, to me, it's all about the whole build. I'd end up spending a bunch of money having it repainted. And at the end of the day, if I'm going to spend 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand on a car, I'm going to build a hot rod. I mean, I want to build something that's worth something at the end that I can get in and drive and have a good time in, as well as, have great, world-class sound. So, I mean, you guys will see me back in the lanes. I've got a 1977 Blazer that I'm building, and it'll be out in the next year and a half, 2 years. It'll debut at SEMA in probably 2001 or 2021, sorry. And but the reason we sold it is because it was time. I could let it sit on the showroom, and we had for 10 years, let it sit on the showroom when we weren't using it, but it was time for a change. And, someone, made me an offer, and I was happy enough to accept it. So.
Good enough. I understand. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to switch to Mr. Jeff Smith. Yeah, the Civic. You guys questions about that?
Hi, can you tell us a bit about the Civic? What was in it? How you built it?
So the Civic was a three-way front stage. The first time when we built it up front, it's been an 8.7 Tweet, which they were all Focal prototype drivers. So it was built as a three-way front home system. Basically, we had a sealed cabinet for the 8, sealed cabinet for the 7, and then basically a sealed cabinet for the tweeter, which it didn't need because those tweeters at the time were sealed on the backside. So, and what we did is we basically created, we moved cabinets around to actually find optimal listening position. Once we did, then we started laser lining the drivers. The seat was bolted into place. We built everything around that. And what we do is we created a target at the headrest about where my ear level was, which maybe, looking back on it, you got different height judges. We thought, well, maybe that would be a problem. But actually, over the years, we realized it wasn't because of the way the drivers were aligned. And what we did is we created a baffle, and we created a mounting system with lasers in it, and we basically moved those lasers around till we could hit the target with every driver. And once we knew that we could actually hit the target knowing the dispersion pattern would hit, your head, your listening position, we began fabricating from there. And, the cabinets were at that point done and in place, and, we bolted them into the substructure of steel that we had fabricated in the car, and from there we began fabricating the interior around it. I'm really big on, if we're going to do a crazy build, about building full interiors. It's what I do now for a living, and so for us, we when we go that route, and we did this as well when we did the Suburban, and for the two vehicles we're building now, for us, the drivers get placed first. We built, outside of the Civic, we pretty much build everything as a 2-seat car even today. It's my hope that it comes back, even though I'm probably one of the people that probably pushed it out because of my Civic. But, it's a big thing. We think 2-seat is still, the ultimate way to go. And so for us, we build everything now that way. And so we want to build the interior back and around it. So the Civic was built as an encompassing sound room on wheels. It was one of those things where a lot of other people said they built one. And I think everyone realized that what you have to do to the car to make it be like that. There's only a few of us, I think, that have ever really done it. And it's that's really kind of it.
Got any follow-up questions? No? All right, Chris. Other than April 18, 19, 2020, Aggie Land was a 7, 8?
I think it's 8 now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Every year I say I'm not going to do it, and then I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and keep doing it. We do it. I think I'll be honest with you. I do it far less for the music and far more about getting everybody together these days. Obviously, I love great sound, and I want people to have great sound, and I want people to enjoy music. But at the end of the day, getting us all together in a common area, and having a drink and having some food and talking about stuff, and sharing our experiences, and getting those friends together, and even maybe some people you're not such great friends with, but when you get us all together in the same room, everybody's ego kind of goes away, and it's good. And I really, honestly, that's the reason that I do it every year. The money that I give away doesn't mean a hill of beans. It's cool. And I'm happy to give it to somebody. And I know I've given Mark a ton of it, and Steve had a ton of it.
That's no kidding.
Where's Steve Head? We need to get him on here.
No. Shoot, I give Steve Head a bunch of money.
Especially last year.
I think you financed at least 1 or 2 college degrees.
Oh my gosh, dude. But Aggie Land is one of those things that you hope you can make it grow into something. And I know it grew from what we did at T-Town years ago in Tulsa, and it's cool, man. And I love that people come from all the way across the pond and come hang out, and it's great. It's phenomenal. People come from Mexico and Canada, and it's a blast. They come to our little slice of country in Texas, and all gather, and we can all have the same interest and enjoy each other's company. So
Cool, man. Well, unless you got anything else, you can hang out as long as you want. If you got to go, you can go. But I think I'm going to switch to Florida here in a second. Cool?
Do it.
All right, man.
All right, you
Talk
guys
to you
have a
soon.
good time.
Thanks, brother.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.
All right, later, Chris.
See you, buddy.
Go Aggies.
Yeah, gum.
Mr. Jeff Smith.
The infamous Jeff Smith.
Oh,
He's only been doing this for a day or two as well. I only saw him. I only saw him on one or two advertisements in 1920 something, but it was around the time that we started the Illuminati. He was a founding member.
Right. Let's see, my story. Let's see. I officially started in the cardio industry in August of 1990. So this past August made 29 years for me. I've been everything in our industry from installer, shop manager, store manager, shop owner, worked for 2 different manufacturers. Well, 3 now, officially. Competitor. Started competing in 1992. That was my very first competition. Because of where I lived at the time, USAC was a huge thing. So USAC was my actual start in the competition scene because we had to drive far to get to Iasca shows, and everybody believed Iasca was the devil back then, you know. So I got my start in the competition world with USAC, and then changed the group of guys that I was hanging around with and working with. And once I did that, I really got a chance to open my eyes to the other side of the competition scene, which was Iasca, and a different way of building and things like that. And that pretty much solidified. I mean, I was already live, breathe, eat. Everything I did was anything related to car stereo. And from there, I got involved with a group of guys that they were already a part of like really organized competition teams. And from there in 95, 96 is when we were asked to join the MTX Thunder Force. And that's when I got my face-to-face time to meet Mark Eldridge, meet Richard. Richard was around then helping out and things like that. And I'll never forget, during that time with the MTX Thunder Force, they actually commissioned Mark Eldridge and Jason Plank to come down to Alabama, where I was at the time, to hang out with our entire competition team. There were about 5 or 6 of us at the time, and we literally got like a week or 2 weeks, however long they were there, like full hands-on. This is how you do it. We got the full MSC training from Mark, like hands-on live, 24/7 every day at the shop, and going through each and every car and learning the proper way of tuning things and, going round and round and things like that. And I'll never forget, we always have that one experience where you decide, okay, I have to learn to do this on my own. So I had probably one of the most basic cars of our crew. It was 5-speaker system, 6.5 tweet and a kick, single 15 in the trunk, 3 amplifiers, all analog Phoenix Gold processors back then. And I literally sat in my driveway for probably 3 days off and on, moving every slider individually, going by each particular track on the Iasca setup disc. Back then, it was every frequency, it was in phase, out of phase, it was clipping, and it was every possible scenario, and making sure I understood exactly what Mark had told us, and going through. And we drove that weekend to a Hi-Fi Bias show, which was a huge retail chain in the Southeast back then. And we drove to that show, and I went to that show, and I didn't let anybody listen to my car. I wouldn't let anybody on my team listen to my car, anything, because we always would go through and check everyone's car before the show. And Nick Scott, who we all know on our side of the pond, really good sound quality judge, gets in my car, and he's like, "You ready?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And he gets out of my car like 25 minutes later, and he's looking at me, and he was like, "What happened to your car?" And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, your car has never sounded this good. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, no, you don't realize, like, seriously, your car has never sounded this good. And back then I was in Pro 301 to 600. And the guy who killed everybody in Pro 301 to 600 back then was a guy named Brantley Miller, which everybody knows on our side of the pond. But that was the first time at a local show I crushed my class. And that's when it really put faith in my ability to tune cars and knowing what truly, like, what I felt like I knew I had a grasp on what to do and moving forward. And so that became like my job with our team and our crew was we build it, give it to Jeff to tune it, right? So never put building aside, still build stuff, building a car now, but I've always gravitated toward being, the tuner with my crew, getting things set up and things like that. So that led to many years in the, in the industry, competing, things like that. Me personally, I have 2 championships. I have a SLAP championship, which was another organization we had here in the States. I have a ASCA championship, but customers and teammates and things like that, cars I've been involved with, many, more than 20 world championships. But always been a people person, always been willing to help people out and be a part of the industry and things like that. And that led to a few different jobs in the industry, where my current job now is I work for AMP Global. I'm the global director of training for that company and all of our different brands, Pack, Best Kids, Phoenix Gold, Stinger, Phoenix, all the cardio brands, which brings me to the UK 2 or 3 times a year. Like I said, like we mentioned in the beginning, I was just there because we are a part of the, we owned Connects 2 there in Birmingham. So I was just there with those guys doing a dealer training. But that's pretty much my story. I travel around the world 24/7. I live in planes and hotels for a living. I'm actually, as soon as I get done tuning a car today, it's time to pack up because I have to fly out tomorrow at 7 a.m. So
this is the hardest working man in car audio.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Trust me.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
He is amazing. God bless him.
I put up a few Sky Miles every year.
A few.
Yeah. You gonna hit that diamond? You gonna hit that diamond soon?
No, see, that's the thing is that because of some of my trips, I will drive from one place to the other. That really cuts down. If I really force myself to fly to every city, I would probably eclipse diamond. So, I enjoy the Hilton points and MX points though. So.
Yeah, car audio.
I'm sure of that.
Anybody here got any questions for Jeff? I think you probably bugged him enough last year, but
No, I really wish the timing would have worked out so that I could have came back, because that was a really amazing show and an amazing time to be with the Emma UK team last year. And I wish everybody here in the States actually had the ability to be a part of the Tuner Challenge. That was really probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen done at a show, because that really would help a lot of the underlings, the guys coming up in our industry, learn so much about tuning the vehicles. Because to me, that was kind of like, you remember the year we did the installer challenge at spring break?
Yeah.
That was kind of like that, where they paired, 1 or 2 seasoned guys with 1 or 2 entry guys, and it just helped the camaraderie and everything else. But it helped those guys kind of get a better, grasp of what was actually going on, because we had to help each other with our cars and then compete in fun activities and then actually compete in sound quality against each other as a group. So that was really cool.
for sure. Hey, Jeff, hang out if you can. I know.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. I'm going to switch to Randy here, do an intro, and then we'll banter a bit.
Sure.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Turd. His name is not Turd Ferguson. Just so
Yes, it is.
so everybody knows that
Yes,
up
it is.
front.
It was on Facebook. They, how you do the memories, and the memory that's on my Facebook page right now was a post about Turd Ferguson. I was like, okay, I guess it was meant to be. So hi guys. So my name is Randy Coonan, and I've been what I like to call a professional spectator in car audio for probably 25 years now. I was born and raised on 2-channel. So when most kids were out playing hide and go seek and tag, I was sitting next to my old man listening to vinyl. I was fortunate enough to be raised on probably one of the, even arguably today, the best driver money could buy, which is the ATC mid-dome. That was a part of the loudspeakers. My dad had a pair of Nelson Reed, where they were kind of a mix between a traditional multi-way and almost a PA setup. But so it was very live, very in your face, very dynamic, very accurate. And then on threshold amplification, which if any of you guys are hip to really some of the prolific people in just audio period, it was a company owned and engineered by Nelson Pass. So I was fortunate enough as a very young individual to be raised on really some of the most accurate products money can buy. And so when it came time to turn 15, 16, where audio became kind of less interesting and friends and girls became more interesting, I got into car audio because I couldn't afford what my dad had. So how to impress the girls at the time and how to still continue on my love for audio was to start building sub boxes and car audio systems. And that was probably around 93, 4, 5, and 6. Graduated high school. And then at that point in time, I was starting to build regionalized demo vehicles, whether it be for Kicker, for Orion. There's a couple of local reps that I was building cars for. And then I heard the word competition, and I was fortunate enough to be a 3-hour drive from, and Jeff made mention of the USAC, IASCA competition scenes, where USAC for a lot of the part was really more of a, and Jeff, wouldn't you agree, it was kind of more of like a Midwest, South territorial thing, and then IASCA was really primarily East Coast, the whole coast, and down kind of in the Florida panhandle. And
USAC was the South. Yeah.
And
Alaska was really big out west as well.
Oh, that's right, because California. Because that was INAC, wasn't it more I?
Yeah.
But regardless, I was fortunate enough at probably the age of 18, I was going to USAC finals every year as a spectator for probably 10, 15 years. And it went from me not being allowed in any car because I was a young punk to I developed relationships, developed friends to where usually I would be the first person to go listen to a car at the show because, I developed relationships and a lot of people valued my input. Then I had the opportunity. IASCA actually started bringing a lot of their major events west across the United States, and which basically made it a little bit more accessible for me to go drive to. And I remember attending my first IASCA competition as a spectator. I want to say it was like 2000, 2001, 2003, somewhere around there. And from that point on, I was hooked. And not to take anything away from the competitors in USAC, but IASCA really was just as a whole other league. I think USAC kind of at the time focused more on tonality, and they were very emotional cars with very little focus on technical things, image placement, depth, width, etc. And whenever I sat into the IASCA cars, it was the total package. It was, not only did I care about tonality, but I had proper placement, depth, width, and you really got a good understanding on how far a person could take a car. And that was an eye-opening event for me. And then, over the decades, it was really kind of befriending a lot of what I would consider the most prolific people, at least on our side of the pond, competitors and builders and tuners. So, I'm fortunate enough, and even though I don't probably converse with Jeff and Nick and Mark and Chris and, a gamut of other people. I still consider them friends and some of them family, because I've been fortunate enough to befriend and sit in a lot of these people's cars that are just mind blowing. I worked for a few manufacturers over the years, from either an R&D or from consulting or from a sales perspective. And then in 2012, I decided to start a small business making real high-end home audio speakers that was a mixture of all of the cool things from a fabrication perspective that we were doing in cars, so that's mixed medium, fiberglass, painted, vinyl, et cetera, and apply that to kind of a home audio environment to where you weren't looking at a wood coffin anymore. You were looking at something that looked as good as it sounded, and it really was trying to get more people to love audio back again. And I did that for a few years, started gaining momentum, started gaining dealerships, and then unfortunately had to take a back seat. Family matters kind of came first, and then kind of been out of it ever since. I built a couple of speakers for hybrid over a few years. One of them was displayed at CES. Cliff was at 2016, 17, 15?
15, I think.
Yeah, 15. Which was a lot of fun. And then most recently, I bought a new car last year, and I had all the intentions to get back into the lanes. And if anything was, as Chris Pate mentioned, it wasn't necessarily to win trophies. It was to go see the family side, right? The people. And I would tell you, and I'm sure it's the same way on your guys' side of the pond, where the people that you're around are equal to, if not more important than the cars that you sit in. So from, like I said, from a professional spectator standpoint, for me, that's what's all about. And another thing and I'll leave it at this, and then I'm sure we can kind of go into a roundtable. But what I learned from the 20 plus years of sitting in people's cars is, at a young age, I would sit into a car, and if it didn't sound this one way, arrogantly you thought it was crap. And what I've come to learn over the many years, and obviously maturing and getting older, is really audio today. I mean, there is true a right and a wrong, and I think we can probably all line up and agree some fundamentals that are good and bad. But audio is like ice cream. And some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, some people like caramel, and that's okay. And we all like ice cream, and I think that's where, for me, the aha happened. Because I would sit in one car, and it would sound amazing and brilliant and do unique things, and then I would sit into another car that was either different tonality or different presentation, but it was equally immersing. And you start to understand that fundamentally there are a lot of different nuances in these cars that make them awesome, and they're all okay. And so that's who I am, and that's where I'm at today.
And by the way, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, and somebody just asked, but you are Randall K. So just in case anybody was asking. So I'll see here.
How's Randy's car coming along?
How's
Randy's car coming along?
Yeah, how is Randy's car coming along?
So
how's Jeff's car coming along?
No comment.
We may have no. So here,
How's your car?
My car's done. Every rental car I get in is perfectly done.
So the intent of my car is I had all the intent of having it out. I took it to one show, and honestly, I didn't really care. I didn't put much time and energy and effort into it. I spent the winter kind of doing the fundamentals. So under carpet, the car is perfect. All the wiring's done perfectly and all that jazz. I'm going to spend this off season building the trunk and rebuilding some of the components up front, and getting to the point where I'm happy with it. And then the goal is if not the first couple shows of next year, SQOLOGY, I would probably say after the first month, barring that I don't have any major work trips ahead of me, I probably will go to 5 or 10 shows next year with a full intent to if anything, annoy some people. So, yeah. So, but it's coming, and it's funny, and probably Jeff probably would align with this too. I love building radical home audio pieces, really mind blowing, very push the envelope stuff. But I was raised on putting magazine articles of cars on my walls when I was growing up. And the cars that I always loved and had on my walls were the kind of more OEM, very minimalist, a lot of carpet. And it's funny is I could go and build anything I want, but I for my personal love, I kind of love that old school look, and I can't get away from it. So I think my current car is going to be a little bit of mixture of something radical, but probably something old school.
Cool. We got a surprise guest.
I saw Mr. Hardison there. Hey.
There's Aaron. Oh my God.
Or Jerry.
Hold on, who just said, "Oh my God"?
AKA Moneybags.
Do I look that horrible?
No.
So
really.
for those who don't know, this is Bikini Punk from Dyma.
An actual rocket scientist.
Not really an actual rocket scientist. Not really sure if it's Bikini Punk or not. I might not read it right, but
It
that's
depends
what
on
I'm
how
going
much you
with.
pay me.
Well, nothing. So Aaron had a
Bikini
question
Punk.
that he sent me, and I was like, well, why don't you just get your butt on here and do it yourself? So he's here in all his glory.
Yeah. First, wanted to say hey to all you fellows. I appreciate and respect all of you individually, and it's really cool to see you guys doing this. So,
Aaron's mic.
Morning, sir. Thank you.
Aaron, you're awesome, man.
I had some questions. So it's actually a few of them, and I don't know if you guys want me to try to ask them all at one time or just kind of go in order. So I'll leave that up to you guys. What do y'all think? It's a few of them. So
Let's go one at a time because
All right, yeah,
I mean
that
your
might be better.
questions. I have to write them down and decrypt them, and then we can figure it out. So
all right, fair enough. Let's try to go maybe with a quicker one first. So I think when you talk to people in car audio, when they say they have an impression of a certain car that they hear, usually they hit on maybe one or two aspects instead of the whole or the system as a whole. So I was going to pose a question to you guys. If you had to break a quantity down into a car, like so you jump into a car and you listen to it and you think, this is my favorite aspect, what would you say that is? Would it be something like maybe tonality, or would it be staging? When you get in and you listen, what's the thing that really strikes you the most and impresses you the most?
Jeff, you want to go first?
Well, Jeff couldn't hear. Jeff, are you having problems hearing Aaron?
Yes, I can't. I didn't hear anything he said. So, what was the question?
Somebody want to repeat that? Good luck.
What's the biggest aspect of sound in a car that really makes you quantify if it's good or not? What is it? Tonality? Is it imaging? Is it what is it about a car that has to be right for you particularly?
Oh, for me, well, let me blow this myth out of the water real quick. I've heard 80,000 people tell me over the years, dude, if you don't have mid-bass, Jeff is not going to like your car.
no,
It was because you would have 20 of them in a door. I mean,
That's right.
I mean, but okay.
they were talking about put on, and there's not a ton of mid bass in put on.
That's
So
not mid bass.
Right.
No,
So
whatsoever.
for me, honestly, realism, and that's what really sucks is that's what we're all trying to achieve is realism in a vehicle. But on our IASCA score sheet, there isn't a true category for realism, right? So being able to honestly be able to close your eyes and the interior of the vehicle disappear, and you feel like Diana Krall, Cassandra Wilson, all these, whoever's singing or playing at the time, the instruments or everything are like right there in front of you. So that's something I always try to do, is to find a vehicle that really emotionally just grabs you and makes you feel that you are not listening to a cardio system, that the entire environment and typically when you're judging a car and you're sitting there and you're trying to zone out past everything, and everything's good, but when you actually close your eyes and the world disappears and all you hear is the space in the room and everything else, that's when that car just grabs onto you and, really makes you want to take it and drive. That was one of the things I think I told Scott Welch when the first time I judged his car in Alabama at finals in Huntsville was, your car makes me want to just drive it. Mm-hmm. And that's when a car really grabs you emotionally and just, it's technical, it images properly, it stages, it has a space, but it has that feeling of just real life to you. I mean, that's when you just want to steal somebody's car from the lane.
Tom said that linearity is what he goes for. That's his number one.
I'd like to know how Tom quantifies linearity.
I was about to ask the same thing.
Nobody knows. It's just magic that goes on the score sheet.
Yeah, I second Jeff in every respect. If the car's not live, if it doesn't sound like live music, it's pointless. I mean, if it doesn't, I want it to image, I want it to stage, have depth, but if it doesn't transcend the vehicle, if it doesn't transport me to whatever the venue may be that I'm listening to, be it studio or be it a live recording, whether it's a stadium or if it's a very small nightclub, if it doesn't transport me there, then and Jeff will tell you, I get bored in a hurry and I'm not going to sit in the car very long.
Yeah, that's one of the things that James taught us along, over the years of James being like the head sound cue judge for a lot of years, is that if you get in a car, it either works or it doesn't.
Yep.
So there's no reason to spend 15 minutes in a car that doesn't work, right? You score it for exactly what it is and you keep going. But when a car has something special, you give every competitor their due diligence and what they can work on and the benefits of what's going on in their car. But when it's something that's truly special, give that car the attention it truly needs.
Mm-hmm. First time I judged Jeff's car, it did that. And that was one of the reasons we became really good friends, is I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. And I thoroughly enjoyed the car. And Jeff tunes like that. I tune like that.
I remember Randy listened to my car. We were in Elite Summer Nationals one year. And Randy was listening to my car. And it's like, I don't remember the comment, but I just remember him looking at my doors going, really? Like 4 mid-bass drivers? And it's like, why not? I mean, the space was there, so why not?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll second that, but I'm going to take it up another notch, because I think, and I'll tell you, and Jeff and Nick, I went to a show 2 months ago. It was in Illinois. It was a SQOLOGY show, and I was set back about truly how. So back in the day, there was the extreme elite, and then there was a huge gap, and there was a bunch of cars sitting on the lower end of the spectrum. And so what I'm getting at is the elite cars really shined because there was such a huge disparity in the gap between really good and eh. And today, at least from a small sample size that I heard, there are so many cars in that chunky middle now where all of them are a lot of ways very similar, but they're so much further ahead in their presentation than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now, with that being said, one seat. So, you can play with that. But I also, there's a healthy, chunky middle of cars where you sit in and you go, I enjoy this. What gets today and what has gotten me, being a professional spectator for many years of those elite cars, is it isn't just tonality. It isn't just technicality. It's a mixture of both, but it's the entire package. So people paid attention to tactile energy transfer, how that car interfaces with you. And if you have to sit a certain way and put your head a certain way to get the right imaging, or keep your leg off this or move your arm off that, you're paying more attention to trying to listen the right way than actually listening. So, people need to think about all of those things, how the car interacts with you physically, how the car acts with you emotionally. And when you can kind of go back, and I'm sure that most of you guys can agree that there are very few cars that did everything right. But I think that if we were to say, hey, pick your top one or two tonality cars, I think probably a lot of us would have probably the same. I think if we were to ask, well, what is your top 1 or 2 or 5 technical cars? I think we can all say the same, and I think we could probably pare that down to one handful of cars that did all of it right. To like, that's it, that's the benchmark, and that's the mecca, and that's it, man.
Did that answer your question, Aaron?
I had to unmute. Yeah. Mr. Ferguson, I really liked your answer as well. Jeff, I hope you can read sign.
See, Jeff, you're on mute, dude.
Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't matter. I can't hear me either
No,
way.
seriously, can you guys hear Aaron?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be.
I'm going to leave that joke off the table.
Ben, did you want to answer that?
Sure. So I used to think it was about tonality, making sure, if there's obvious tonal issues in a car, then yeah, I can't enjoy it. However, you hop in most cars on dealership lots these days. They've kind of got tonality mostly right. I'm not going to say they're great, but the tonality is enjoyable in most any manufacturer car you can go sit in today. What I find, we bought a new vehicle last summer, and it's my wife's daily driver, but occasionally I do hop in it and drive it. What really, really bugs me about that car is that there is no image whatsoever. The sound it's there. There's music, but there's no center image. There's no realism. And I think having things in phase and correct for where you're listening from goes a longer way to me these days than the ultimate tonality. Not disregarding tonality completely, but if there's no semblance of an image, hey, I lost my camera. Anyway, I think you got the gist of what I'm saying. I can't enjoy a system if it's the singer's way directly left coming from that speaker that I can see.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yep.
It's funny that I find myself, and I joke with other people about this, as much as I travel, I get in the car, automatically fade forward, balance to the right a little bit, to make somewhat of a center image.
You can't do that in this Accord. I've done that in the Accord that my wife drives, and so it has DTS processing, all that, and I turn all that crap off, and I tick it over a couple notches to the right, fade it all forward, and it's still just some cars you can pull it off. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I want to do. I just want to turn on a podcast, not Cliff, and listen.
Well, I'm going to bring in one other aspect too, is size, and I think we're probably going to have disagreements maybe in this team, but I don't know. I always thought that image size should be relative to image depth. So in order for a image size to be above dash eye level where we score in modern day, and I obviously I don't know EMA rules as well as probably I should, but I have a feeling they're probably the same. In order to, in real life, get an image size that small or however it is, in real life, I have to be 50, 100 feet, 200 feet away from that listener to truly get a person this big perspectively on my dash. And so a lot of the cars that I have personally loved is that the image size is relative to the image depth. So if the depth is at the dash, at the cowl, middle of the hood, then if it's a stand-up bass, well, then it should sound like a stand-up bass, in my opinion, size-wise to where the depth is. So if they're 5 feet away, well, then I prospectively should have an image size that's relative to that.
No, I agree 100%. No question.
And to me, that's when Jeff talks about when the car disappears and it's real and it sounds like you're emotionally involved. that's, in my opinion, putting things on top of a dash. It means you're constraining that image, that size, that sound in a very small space versus the car disappearing, and it doesn't matter where it sits; it's just there.
Aaron, do you have what's your next question for Jeff that he's not going to be able to hear?
It's a song. It's called "I'm All Out of Love."
This is so weird.
Does that go with the size thing?
Steer clear of that
I
altogether.
seriously don't understand why I can hear everybody but him.
This hurts my feelings.
It's funny, Jeff. It's really funny. You would love it if you were hearing it.
Yeah, you guys tell them I'm funny. Make them believe. All right, so I'm gonna try to make this short so you guys can relay it to Jeff. It's going to be pretty simple. It's just your best car audio memory. You know, whether a demo that you got or gave, friendship you made, just anything like that. If favorite car audio memory.
Headphones out of phase.
Jeff, he wants to know what. There, he just told you. He wants to know what your favorite memory in car audio is.
In cardio in general or cardio competition?
Sure, either one.
General.
My absolute favorite memory was, well, let's call it favorite memory / accomplishment. Was 2004. The installer, what was it? I just mentioned earlier.
Install challenge.
Install challenge, sound quality challenge, whatever thing we did at spring break that year.
Yeah, I remember that.
I had worked my butt off on my car. I had just did the Alpine F1 system in my car, and I had all the individual amplifiers in my car, and I got killed at 2003 slap finals. This is when me and Scott were going up head to head in Expert Street, and I had to really I was like, all right, I got to just get down and figure out what's going on with my car. And I spent like weeks and weeks and weeks on end tuning, making notes. I had like a true Trapper Keeper 3-ring binder, making notes, what worked, what didn't work, and just going back note after note. And there's a photo of me somewhere on the internet of me laying on the floor at the award ceremony because I was beat. I was worn out. I had been awake for days and I couldn't take it anymore. But when we all got on the stage for Top 30 and you're watching everybody go off the stage and you all of a sudden realize you're looking around on stage and there's like 10 people that are your closest friends, you know, in the industry, outside the industry, you hang with them every weekend. And next thing you know, you're looking around and there's 5 guys standing around you and you're like, wait a minute, why am I still up here? Like, what's going on? And then next thing you know, there's 3 guys on stage and you're like, I'm still up here. And then it was 2 people. And I'm literally like, it's me and Mark Eldridge left on the stage. And that's when and I got second place, no big deal. But that's when I'm looking down at all the other people at that one show that I beat in that competition, and you're just like, how did that happen? You know, and you're always grateful for the friendship and the time hanging out with everybody and things like that. But that was one of the times that you actually get that internal pat on the back of your hard work actually paid off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that everything everybody ever taught you, you finally were able to get it all to finally click. And it wasn't just one judge that judged our car that weekend. We had probably 16 different judges in and out of our cars multiple different times. And it was like, I don't know, that was still probably to this day, probably the greatest accomplishment. I mean, the fact that I spent all those years working with Mark, being on the same team with Mark and things like that. And then he was way gone at that time. I don't know if he was kicker or JL back at that. Oh, he was JBL at that time.
It was JBL.
Yeah, JBL at that time. And, you know, it was just one of those things that, you know, it's another one of those confirmation deals that, you know, you actually feel like you know what you're doing for a change, you know? Because there are certain shows where competitors get bummed out because they go to some shows and they get their butts handed to them, and then they're all bummed about it, and then they don't know what to do because they keep getting the same judges in their area after year, and then they go outside their region and they get a new judge, and they get killed. So that's why traveling around and making the different shows gives you a little bit of different variation on your cars as far as who judges it. Yeah, different perspectives and things like that. That always helps out, whether it's going to Chris Pay's show, going up to the show that Ben does up at Mobile Audio Plus. There's so many different. Larry's show at Still Valley.
Yeah, Still Valley.
There's so many different aspects of different judges and things like that to get so many different sets of ears in the car. That it really gives people the ability to really get a better grip about it. And like I tell people all the time, when they get mad about score sheets, listen. This score sheet is not paying your mortgage. This score sheet is not tucking your kids in at night. This score sheet is just us here having fun. None of us. The people that do this industry for a living, this stereo show did not pay our bills. We are here for fun. We may get a little bit of money to eat with or travel with or something like that every now and then, but no, it's for fun. This is fun competition. This is not pro football, pro baseball, basketball. This is fun hanging out with your friends in a hobby. That's exactly what we do. So have fun. Don't take it personal. And
no, really
keep it going, man. Keep it going.
Nick, what about you? Can you remember back that far? I'm glad I'm off camera right now because you can't look me in the eyes. So, okay, I'm scared. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm assuming you're talking to me.
Yes.
You're implying a mold.
No, young man. Would you? What's your Tell us about your memories. Well, one memory. We don't have all day.
How did cars stage in a bucket, in a tea bucket? Was it pretty good? Did it do okay in a 30?
My friends, can't you tell, folks? There's so many, but if I have to choose one, it's the most recent one, and Jeff Smith was a big part of it. I had an opportunity to compete at Chris Pate's show, Aggieland, a couple of years ago. I had made the decision that I was going to do this one more time because it was supposed to be Chris's last time that he was going to do the Aggieland show. And that subsequently has changed thanks to Clifton.
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's okay. And I decided, well, I'm going to do this one more time and see if I could get in the top 5 with a 2014 Chevy Silverado truck. And I went all out. I had decided that it was time to do this one more time. And I made the decision that I was going to put 5 speakers in the car, factory locations, and see how well I could do. And when I'm at the show and Jeff Smith, I will never forget this. Jeff Smith gets out of my truck gets through judging. He looks at me and he goes, "Dude, how in the hell did you pull this off?" And I went, when Jeff told me that, and I went, I got a shot at this. But I also knew that I had a really difficult time because if you know Steve Head, and you know what Steve Head does, Steve Head pulls all the stops out, doesn't care what he has to do. He is going to win come hell or high water. It's a lot like Mark. And he had a customized Blazer, customized mini Chevy Blazer with a customized dash. The seats were 6 feet back, 3 feet in. It's a fantastic, incredible sounding vehicle. And I knew that there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to beat that thing. And we get to the ceremony about who's going to win this thing. When I make it into the top 3, my name has not been called as far as from last place all the way to first. I'm thinking, well, maybe I've got second. And when his name and my name were called to come up as first and second, I was like, this is fine. I'm going to lose to one of my best friends in this world who has got this incredible sounding vehicle. And when his name is called second, I realized that I'm actually going to win this thing. I'm like, oh my God, really? And, I had decided, win or lose, this was it. This is the very last time that I was going to be in the lanes competing. And to win that thing, and to have my friends like Jeff Smith and James Feltenberger and Doug Winker be there and be a part of it was just icing on the cake of all the many years that I had been doing this. To have the opportunity to win this and with these guys there, and my wife and Chris Pate, it's just the culmination of all these many years, and to justify the theories and the work that we've all been putting into this. But more than anything, it was about having all of my friends there, the vast majority of them in the industry. And Jeff will tell you, I got rather emotional about the whole thing because I'm an emotional person. I'll be the first person to admit it. But it really and truly, it was a magical day, a magical moment, and I'll never forget it.
Randy, what about you?
I'm gonna break the rules in my typical Randy way, and I'm gonna break it into two magical moments. One, I think, is more from a spectator perspective. Sitting in, and guys, Nick and Jeff, was it 03 when we had it in Kentucky? What was Iasca in Kentucky, in Louisville?
That was Louisville 2004. I won that year.
Okay, that's right. That's right. After I've sat in Mark's Forerunner a few times in a few different iterations prior to that, but I heard, when I drove in and I started talking to people, they're like, Randy, I mean, Mark's truck's on. It's the best it's ever heard. It's the best it's ever been, and you really got to go listen to it. And so it was on my first 2 or 3 cars to listen to, and that was the first time for me. I'm sure it was probably a Richard Clark-esque experience for others. It was a very much so the same with me. Still to this day, I don't think there's any car that has scared the living crap out of me more than Eldridge's Forerunner that year. Like, you would turn up the volume knob and you'd go, whoa! And then he'd go, no, dude, stop being a wuss and turn it up more. And you'd sit back and you go, holy crap, this is and I've even got goosebumps now. It's crazy even thinking about it. But it truly defined what in my opinion, the pinnacle, the holy grail of it was tonally maybe a little bit more on the pro side. So once again, this goes back to the chocolate vanilla, thing,
ice cream,
the ice cream piece. But it really was defining for me of what truly could happen in a vehicle. So from a spectator piece, that was that. And then in 07, very much similar to Jeff and to Nick, is I built my own car. It was an 01 Accord Coupe. Jeff, much love for the Accords, brother. And it was, if you kind of notice a common theme, there was a 5-speaker setup. So it was Audio Technology 5s. It was Genesis Ring Revs. It was an Aurora 18 Infinite Baffle. It was tons of power. So I had a Zapco C2K modded 4.0. So it was 500 a tweeter, 500 a 5, and then a modified 6.0 on the 18. And it did things that most cars still to this day hasn't, that I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to sit into. And the thing, it was mine. I was like, holy crap, this is my car. We end up doing a round robin to where everybody was thrown into a pot of stew.
Chris.
Hey, Michael. Thrown into a pot of stew, and it was basically everybody is out to win. And very first show ever competing, I ended up taking third to Matt Roberts and John Marsh, and I'll take that any day. And that was, for me, was the fun. That was it, man. After that, I was like, I need to do this again. This is great.
So I've added Mike Myers, not from the Halloween show, into the podcast here. He is, I think, the one vehicle that I know of during any of our events that actually got his vehicle driven away from the event during it. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. I'm standing there and facing away from the street, and Tom Myers is in Mike's car. I turned around. He was judging Mike's car, and the window's down. He waves, and he drives off. Literally left the building, left the parking lot, gone. So apparently he liked it that day. So anyway, Mike, we're just talking fun. Aaron is asking us difficult questions to get answered. So we're working on that. So I'm going to let Aaron ask. He says his final question, so Jeff Smith cannot hear him again. And Mike, well, I'll call on you on this one and jump in.
All right.
What's up, Michael?
What's happening, my friend?
Nah, same old man, just living the dream. If you
Mike
guys
can actually hear him. That's.
Dude, I love you, Jeff. You're my best friend. Still can't hear me? All right, never mind. You're not my best friend.
That's not what he was saying earlier. I don't know.
Hey Jeff, he typed out his question on the private chat. So
yes, thank you guys. So I'm going to read from that question then, and you guys have probably already read it. So
if you had one piece,
listen to Jeff.
Piece of advice or trick or trade, what would it be?
Reading out loud isn't all that interesting, Jeff. Aaron, why don't you ask the question so the rest of us can hear what it is?
All right. So I'm said, as a judge and competitor, if you had one piece of advice or trick of the trade to give to an SQ competitor, what would it be? That could be install related or tuning.
My one piece of advice or trick is learn to trust yourself more than anything else. Yeah. I don't mind helping other people, right? And tuning cars for people, but I always try to tell someone, learn to trust yourself, learn to do this yourself, because it makes it, and no disrespect to anybody in the industry, just writing a check for something, you can definitely still enjoy it. But when you
why you gotta bring me up like that, Jeff? Man, you gotta call me out right in front of everybody.
But when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, it's like me looking at my daughter. I know I made that, So it's like it's a different feeling. It's a different, at least to me, it is. It's a different connection when that's my 4-wheel baby that gets as much money as my real baby does. I mean, to me, it's just. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to not always believe everything on the internet. Jesus.
Everything on Dyma is true. Ask Aaron.
And just learn to trust yourself. I mean, just learn to. I mean, look at good example, Mike Myers, right? I've known this guy from Mecca for years, and I look at his car evolving over the years. And sweet Jesus, that car is his car and his brother's car, just amazing. And these guys hone their skills just by making adjustments, listening to what other people say, and going back to their lab and, learning and honing their own skills and getting advice from people, but not living gospel by other people. You really have to learn yourself to, make things happen. I mean, just don't always rely on someone else's word. Make yourself a believer by teaching yourself.
Well, and I think there's something to be said is I don't want to sit in 20 cars that sound exactly the same. That would be boring. I mean, I would walk away from car audio at that point in time. So, finding your swim lane and owning it, I absolutely agree, Jeff, is a big deal, right?
Yeah, never stop learning. That's for me. Never stop learning. Never stop asking questions. Because the minute we stop asking questions is the minute you start limiting yourself and your ability to grow. And in this industry, and especially when we're all talking about competing, listen to as many vehicles as you can. But remember, it's about the music. It's about the experience. It's about the camaraderie. But, man, when it comes to just flat competing, never stop learning. Because I'm one of these people that if I'm going to get in, for instance, if I get in somebody's vehicle, then I'm actually judging, and I hear something that is really cool, it's really different, it makes a big difference. I'm going to go start asking questions of that person. How did you pull this off? What did you do? Because you know what? A very wise man taught me a very long time ago, wisdom comes from the counsel of many. Nobody knows it all.
Right.
Not, and Mark Eldridge will be the first person to tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, Mark usually says during his class and after his class, well, I learned as much as you guys did, so that was fun. Mike, you can go ahead and answer that question. Then why don't you give us a little bit of background on you as well?
Yeah. So to kind of expand upon, Jeff's answer is, I got started back in competition in about 2012. It's when my brother Chris, kind of had found Mecca for himself, and we really liked the classes. The way they classified the cars, where it's a car with all the speakers in the stock locations don't have to compete against cars with a totally rebuilt dashboards and things like that. Is what really kind of drew us to the Mecca sound quality and the way that they classify it. So once we got started back into it, we learned pretty quickly that the way cars are built nowadays is much different than the way we did them, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, back when we were competing in USAC and IASCA, early 2000, from like 98 to 2000. So the biggest difference was, of course, the use of digital signal processing, and then a lot of the cars were using dash-mounted speakers or pillar-mounted speakers or something like that. And after listening to a few cars that had, the speakers up high, because in the beginning I was like, no, that's not really going to work. Path length differences and all that kind of stuff. It just shouldn't work well. And then I listened to a few of the cars that had the speakers up high. People like Demetrius Willingham was at some of the first events that we had went to, and Mark Brooks and some of those guys. And after we listened to their cars, we're like, holy cow, this really does work, and a lot better than I would have imagined. And so then we had to relearn a lot of stuff to try to be competitive in today's competition atmosphere. And like Jeff had said, we had to read a lot and try to learn what everybody else had learned, but you don't take all that at face value. You try it, and some of the stuff that everybody says works, and some of it is just ridiculous and doesn't work in your application. So whole lot of learning to get to the point to where I am nowadays, but it's been an awesome road. Just trying to learn how to get better, and then not only how to make the car sound like that, but what are you trying to make it sound like is the bigger trick, I think. So going to like Mark Eldridge's sound quality seminar, and trying to build your own reference or target to try to emulate in your own vehicle was of paramount importance.
Aaron, you got any more questions?
No, I'm gonna get off the stage.
Well, I want to add a few small things. Some of the best cars that I've sat in weren't necessarily the best cars I originally sat in. And what I'm getting at is the cars that made small incremental changes over time and not radical sweeping changes were oftentimes the best cars. And people feel that, once again, they get emotional. Today I score bad. I need to make large sweeping changes. No, a lot of times it's just small incremental changes. I think Big Z's Regal, in a lot of ways, even though he did make some aesthetic changes, fundamentally the car was a lot of the same thing, just packaged differently. I think his was a testament of small increment. I would say Jeff's car was the same way too. It was just small incremental changes over time. It could have been tuning. It could have been a little bit of placement. It could have been some of the fundamentals. But to me, if you even approach it scientifically, that is the only way you're going to in my opinion, achieve success. And then the second piece, and this is probably getting me in a lot of trouble, but I really don't care, is science is a guide, but science isn't always. There's the and higher education is always taught in two ways specifically: theory and lab, and sometimes they are identical, and sometimes they contradict each other. Science and I think what's funny is I have sat in cars where you go, there's no way in hell this car is going to do anything right. And I can probably say Tony Pasquale's car was probably a testament to that there. And you go, no way can a horn and tins do what it does. And then you sit in a car that was 100% based in science with people who are a lot smarter than myself as it relates to the how and the why. And it was 100% built around white paper spreadsheets and theories. And you sit in the car and you're going, this is the worst car. And in fact, I can't get out of this car fast enough. And it's funny how that plays out, but all it really does is kind of supports Jeff's thing is trust yourself and just own it. And then what I'm hopefully at one day I'll get to come over the pond and experience is, I think one thing that modern day competing in the U.S. is lacking, not all competitors, but most, is the attention to detail piece. I think looking at pictures of the cars over in EMA and UK and overseas, you guys are doing things that we were doing, and this is no slight against timing. The attention to detail that you guys do over the pond, at least from what I see, either digitally, is absolutely breathtaking, and it's a true testament of craftsmanship. And that's something, honestly, that I think is missing here in the States, because a part of just the listening was experiencing the car, was seeing all of the little nuances. Oh man, you made this, or was it an amp rack or wiring or distribution, or just a lot of the foundational elements, I think also added to the, and then I know as a judge, you have to separate the install from the sound, but a lot of times it was the immersive experience. It was the sum of the parts. It was the install and the sound that was the total package. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And that to me was what drove the lines around the cars and people waiting to go and sit in it. So that's just my O2.
Randy, I can say this from going over to visit the UK last year and be a part of the EMA UK finals. Of course, we see all the photos and things like that. But when you actually get in these cars and you get to experience the way that these guys go to a show, install sound quality, the ESPL, where they do the presentation and where they have to do the crowd participation, and it's their version of doing SPL where they dance and do all these different routines and stuff like that. It's literally like what it felt like being in Greenville in 95, 96,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the amount of energy that they have, the manufacturer participation, insane. I mean, like even right now, they are at Midbase, which is one of the speaker manufacturer distributors there. And the participation, the amount of install sound quality and crowd participation that is required in every class. I mean, it is something I wish we still had here in the States. I mean, they're in what I think is probably a year, one of their heyday years. At least it feels that way the time that I've been there. But hopefully Emma will grow to be that way on our side of the pond, because we've separated ourselves between the sound quality guys, the SPL guys, because we never got along at shows. It was all, I mean, we did back in the day when the sound, that was one part of USAC that was useful, because you could still have a good sounding car and still pop off a 150, and still have, crowd participation. So hopefully, Tom, Clifton, and we get Emma like really moving in the States to get that type of involvement to make it fun again, to be a true show. Sound, install, SPL, everything else, and hopefully get some manufacturers back involved.
So everybody in that room that we see, I beg you and I implore you that if you're enjoying and you guys are having that level of participation, protect it at all costs. Because at some point, for some point in time, I would probably say about 10 years ago. I mean, would that be a fair statement? About 10, maybe 15.
15.
Something got lost on our side, and I don't know. And obviously, retail changes are, our focus isn't audio; it's phones and technology and social media. But I think if you were to tell the people 10 or 15 years ago that, hey, it's going to be like this in 10 or 15 years, I think we probably would have done some things differently to protect. And so my advice to people over the pond is to protect at all costs, because it's a lot easier to maintain. It's a lot harder to claw back. And that goes without saying, just in not just competition, but sales and professional and I mean, even personal. It's hard to reattain what you've had. And so retain, and do it at all costs.
Amen.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's having a graduated competition level to where the people don't have to spend an extraordinary amount of money to be competitive is going to be of paramount importance to get new people into it. Because one of the things that was kind of the demise of install with SQ or with SPL is that the level got pushed up so high that people, such as myself, that were starting into it, there's no way I could afford to be on that type of competitive level.
We lost Mike.
Mike. Anyway, so it's been about 2 hours, which was about our allotted spot of the show here. So we'll try to pull things back together here. But anyway, I really appreciate it, guys. I know we had Chris Pate and Mark Eldridge, and Ben was there somewhere, and Mike Myers, and then Aaron and Randy and Jeff and Nick and everybody here that has participated. Thank you. I know it was nobody knew what to expect or what to do or anything else. And I know it wasn't 2 p.m. when you started there. So I think Nick is just now waking up. So good morning, Nick. Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Good morning.
But anyway, thank you guys much for doing this. I'm sure we'll figure out a way to do this again and figure out the best way to do it. But I appreciate it. And I'm going to sign off on this side.
Appreciate
you guys say
it.
me last.
You've had fun when it doesn't feel like 2 hours. And
Yeah.
I love
That's
it.
what she said.
We don't see each other enough, and people over in the room. For those of you that stuck around the whole time and came and went, totally get it. It was awesome, guys. It was an honor to hear me ramble. So,
Yeah, I second the motion. Thank you very much for having me.
Now the next time you guys have to listen to them talk for 2 hours. So that's how this goes.
We can do that. That's not a problem.
Learn something from those guys.
Absolutely.
I won't be able to understand any of it, but we'll figure it out. All right, guys. Going to sign off. Thanks.
Right.
Talk to you later.
Guys.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye, Aaron.
Bye.
Yeah, bye, Aaron.